Like and subscribe and click the bell icon to get new video updates.
The inside story of the Aboriginal Community Benefit Fund collapse and the missing millions in the fading autumn light. The 32-metre yacht is hard to miss. From any vantage point across the Gulf Harbour Marina, just north of Auckland, the Dreamcatcher is easily the largest vessel at the end of its pier. When it first turned up I thought, wow, that's too big for here, said a fisherman who has been operating in the area for 29 years. The Dreamcatcher is registered to a private company in the Cook Islands and was advertised for $3.95 million $5.55 million, in 2018. Along with a waterfront residence recently listed for more than $2 million New Zealand dollars, $1.82 million, the Dreamcatcher is owned by co-founder of the Aboriginal Community Benefit Fund, ACBF, UK-born businessman Ron Pattenden. At 74, after a long career in insurance, hospitality and tourism, he told the ABC he'd been hoping for a quiet life. Instead, serious questions have been raised about his decades with ACBF and the treatment of its Indigenous customers. Thousands of Indigenous Australians have been left reeling by the collapse of the company, also known as Youpla, in March this year. Many had paid thousands of dollars to ACBF over decades, after signing up to funeral insurance policies under the mistaken belief that it was a funeral savings fund owned and run by Aboriginal people. Upon learning of the yacht and the waterfront property, former customer and Gomeroi man Donald Uncle Duck Craigie said he could only dream of such a lifestyle. We dare not contemplate living a life of luxury such as Ron Pattenden, he said. Put it this way, he does not need to fear his funeral expenses. He should come back here to answer questions about the demise of the ACBF and Youpla funeral funds. The Australian Securities and Investment Commission, ASIC, has confirmed it is investigating past and present directors for breaches of both the Corporations Act and the ASIC Act. Mr Pattenden is understood to be one of the main people of interest. All of those people who were directors of ACBF need to step up and please explain themselves, Mr Craigie said. While he declined a formal interview, Mr Pattenden told the ABC he was not to blame for the company's collapse. Mr Pattenden, who splits his time between Vanuatu and New Zealand, sold ACBF in 2018, after new chief executive Bryn Jones was slammed for the company's exploitative treatment of Indigenous customers by the Royal Commission into banking. But while Mr Pattenden sold the business and stood down as director, he remained linked to the company until 2020. Money fed back into community. The ACBF's history goes back to the early 1990s, when an article in national Indigenous newspaper, the Koori Mail, labelled it an innovative solution. Indigenous Australians could chip in a few dollars a fortnight, and when they died their families would quickly be paid out thousands of dollars to cover their funeral. The article explained two Aboriginal health workers in Armidale came up with the idea, Dudley, Duncan and Richard Widders. There was no mention of co-founder Ron Pattenden even though he was a director and company secretary and held 40% of the shares. The company was recruiting plenty of customers, and Richard Widders told the Koori Mail the nature and affordability of the funeral fund meant parents could insure kids younger than 10 for $2 a week. The ACBF fully expects to have over 2,000 members by Christmas, and in this regard any surplus funds available will be directly fed back to communities to assist in health areas, Mr Widders told the paper. But the New South Wales government briefly shut the fund down with an injunction order in December 1992 while the court considered whether the fund was registered properly. Then NSW Consumer Affairs Minister Kerry Chikarovski said the funds were not secure, and it appeared the company has been telling members that profits from the scheme would be used for Aboriginal welfare, although detailed arrangements have not been spelled out. It was confusing for everyone. A second fund was launched in 1993, the Aboriginal Community Benefit Fund 2, ACBF 2. Court documents show Fund 1 was back in operation by December 1993. In just 3 years, 9,000 First Nations people were signed up for funeral insurance across the two funds. Mr Craigie remembers the day a tall man with a British accent knocked on his door. This non-Aboriginal person walked up the driveway, introduced himself as Ron Pattenden and said he worked for the Aboriginal Community Benefit Fund that was wholly owned and operated by Aboriginal people, he said. He was a good talker. He was very persuasive. Mr Craigie and his partner, Gomeroi woman Cheryl Fernando, were living in Moray at the time, and said the cost of funerals had become a huge burden in the community. We were sort of thinking, oh, this is good, this is a great idea.